Good evening and Merry Christmas. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Azam Khan. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. The city recorded 50 COVID deaths today as daily infections stay above the 20,000 mark. Beijing's interpretation of the national security law could be available by Tuesday. And a frigid winter storm in the United States has claimed 19 lives. COVID cases on the mainland continue to surge as the National Health Commission halts publishing daily COVID data. Neighboring Macau could also see COVID cases peak next week. Macy Mock reports.
Hong Kong reported 21,255 new COVID cases today, marking the third consecutive day when new cases have surpassed 20,000. 50 more people infected with COVID died today. Due to the rise in cases at residential care homes, several halls at the Asia World Expo are converted into holding centers to treat elderly people infected with the virus and people with disabilities who are asymptomatic or have mild symptoms. The two exhibition halls can accommodate 540 beds. New COVID infections in China dropped significantly as only 2,983 cases were reported throughout the country yesterday. And for the fifth day in a row, there have been no COVID-related deaths. This comes after the National Health Commission stopped publishing daily COVID data starting today, as infections have exploded in the wake of an abrupt easing of tough restrictions. The task will now be handled by the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Authorities in the eastern province of Zhejiang reported that recent COVID infections had exceeded 1 million cases per day, which is far from the roughly 2,000 cases reported by the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Officials expect roughly 2 million people will get infected in the province at the peak of the current wave, which should come soon. The World Health Organization has received no data from China since Beijing eased restrictions. The organization says the sheer volume of cases and the size of the country would make it very difficult to derive an approximate figure on a daily basis. Meanwhile, a researcher from the Chinese university projected roughly 120,000 to 160,000 people in Macau have been infected with COVID till yesterday, slightly higher than the government's estimate. Macau's chief executive Ho Lat Seng visited a local hospital to encourage the staff to protect themselves and battle through the peak season. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
Beijing could possibly provide the interpretation for the national security law as requested by Chief Executive John Lee by Tuesday. Hong Kong's sole delegate to the National People's Congress Standing Committee, Tam Yu Chung, said the discussion is likely to be on the agenda of the committee's meeting on Tuesday. The chief executive had asked Beijing for further clarification after the city's courts ruled in favor of media tycoon Jimmy Lai by letting him hire British barrister Tim Owen as defense counsel in his national security trial. Chief Executive John Lee and his wife hosted local students at Government House this morning to celebrate Christmas. As posted on Lee's social media, he invited winners of the Hong Kong Cup Diplomatic Knowledge Contest, carol singers from the Child Development Matching Fund, and Secretary for Education Choi Yuk Lin. The students gave Christmas cards to Lee and his wife and received gifts from the first couple in exchange. Hong Kong will prosper if the youth prospers, Lee commented in his social media post. He hopes to see local youngsters with positive thinking and love for the country become future leaders. Financial Secretary Paul Chan said the city had gained momentum for a speedy economic recovery during this quarter, but expects headwinds as challenges still remain. Writing on his weekly blog, Chan said he has met with around 100 students last week to get their opinion on next year's budget. Many raised concerns about wealth disparity and sought more support for the underprivileged. The government, Chan said, has pledged support to disadvantaged groups, but admitted there were limited resources, and striking a balance between providing help and maintaining long-term stability of public finance was crucial. Chan has urged the public to provide suggestions for next year's budget. 8 people were injured after a private car collided with a minibus carrying civil aid service staff near Disneyland this morning. The crash happened around 7 a.m. this morning when the minibus took a turn near the west gate of the Team Disney building on Magic Road. The private car in the adjoining lane could not stop in time and crashed into the minibus. All injured were taken to North Lantau Hospital. Police arrested a man and a woman on suspicion of making and using fake banknotes. Police raided a Yau Ma Tai hotel room yesterday and seized 9 counterfeit $1,000 bills and printing equipment. The 2 unemployed suspects had used around $17,500 worth of fake currency to pay for taxi rides, massage service, and for purchases at convenience stores since mid-November. Police described the quality of the fake notes as bad and believed suspects were able to get away by distracting storekeepers or conducting transactions in dim light. Pope Francis reprimanded the greedy and those seeking power at the expense of the vulnerable whilst presiding over the Christmas Eve Mass at the Vatican. His message comes at a time when thousands of migrants waiting to seek asylum sought Christmas cheer in crowded shelters on the US-Mexico border. Pope Francis led more than 7,000 faithful in St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican for the traditional Christmas Eve Mass. The Mass, which normally is conducted at midnight to mark the birth of Jesus Christ, was moved to early evening, considering the fragile health of the pontiff, and to let people celebrate Christmas Eve with their loved ones.
Povera mangiatoia fa dunque emergere le vere ricchezze della vita.
Drawing from the life of Jesus, the Pope directed his speech toward the greedy, who sought to gain at the expense of children and the vulnerable. He condemned war, consumerism, and pointed out that real riches of life can be found in simplicity. He referred to Jesus as the child of Bethlehem, who resides in every child. The Pope's homily comes at a time when tens of thousands of migrants who fled violence and oppression in their country are seeking refuge on the streets of Mexican border towns as the cold winter storm plunges temperatures to record lows across the US and along the border. That hasn't stopped some of them from celebrating Christmas. All are waiting for the US Supreme Court to lift pandemic-era restrictions on asylum seekers, which the Biden administration has requested for, but the decision will be made after the holiday weekend. The frigid winter storm continues to wreak havoc across the United States and has so far claimed 19 lives. Millions of homes and businesses are left without heating as heavy snowfall and gale force winds knock down power lines. A major part of the United States continues to be in the grip of a severe winter storm, with alerts stretching from coast to coast and all the way down south to the Mexico border. Buffalo, New York, was buried under record snowfall, where 2 people died in their homes as emergency crews battling historic blizzard conditions couldn't make it in time. New York Governor Kathy Hochul, who placed the state under emergency, said Buffalo Niagara International Airport will be closed through the holidays, and she'll be seeking federal financial relief.
In addition to having a statewide emergency declaration, I'll be asking the federal government for a declaration of emergency that will allow us to seek reimbursements for the extraordinary expenses of all the overtime and the fact that we've brought in mutual aid from other parts of the state. There is not one place in the state of New York where the temperature is above 0 as far as the real field temperature. That's what it feels like on your skin. And so this may be an historic event in that respect alone, that every part of New York is suffering the effects of this Arctic chill.
The brutal winter storm has left over 1.5 million households and businesses without power in the lead up to Christmas. The frigid temperatures, however, did not deter the National Football League, as the Cleveland Browns took on the New Orleans Saints at a bone-chilling -14 degrees Celsius
in one of the coldest games in franchise history. Ground crews toiled hard to clear the ice from the field to ensure kickoff was on time.
It's been a distressing few months for the construction sector as industrial accidents frequent. A bill amendment was proposed for the occupational safety and health ordinances to beef up penalties. While a Labor representative pushes for its approval, a legislator stresses that it is not a cure-all. Katrina Lau has the story.
Industrial accidents happen from time to time, but none garnered more attention than this shocking crane collapse at a public housing construction site in September. It took away the lives of 3 workers, and authorities responded by temporarily suspending works at 9 other sites managed by the contractor. But less than 2 months later, another worker was killed by a falling iron beam at a Yaotong project built by the same company. Since September, 12 workers had passed away from 10 serious industrial accidents. Compared to the whole of last year, when 23 workers were killed, the average monthly fatality was 30% higher. A lawmaker felt that negligence by contractors only forms part of the problem.
For example, it may be due to shortage of labor, or for some of the government construction, whether it is because the deadline is not realistic.
Kong is worried that by focusing too much on speed, the government may cause undue pressure on frontline workers involved in housing projects. She explained that contractors in turn put pressure on frontline workers to reduce financial losses, which can lead to neglecting safety measures. A concern group which assists victims of industrial accidents believes contractors choose to turn a blind eye because the penalties simply lack deterrent effect.
If I am the employer or if I am the lawbreaker, maybe I would prefer to break the law to receive a minor consequence rather than I put much money on safety.
Back in February, the Labor Department proposed stiffer punishment for those who violate the Occupational Safety and Health Ordinance. It suggested a maximum fine of $10 million, a 20-fold jump, as well as 2 years imprisonment. Among the fatal cases in 2020, the average fine imposed was around $60,000. Since the law took effect, only 1 contractor was jailed for 2 weeks, while 3 others received suspended sentences. Hsu said frontline workers are the most vulnerable and urged companies to provide regular safety training. Katrina Lau, HKIBC.
On to the weather now. Similar to Christmas, it'll be a bright and sunny Boxing Day. Temperatures will range between 15 and 19 degrees. Fine and dry through the holidays before the mercury hits the lower teens in the latter part of the week. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Sunday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Azam Khan. Thanks for watching. Good night and Merry Christmas.